What is a story you have been dying to tell? So when my youngest daughter was maybe 4 years old, she and I headed to the shopping mall one afternoon. While there, I have to pee and realize I have no choice. I have to take her into the men's room with me. I go into a stall, usually reserved for people sitting down to do their business, and with my kid standing behind me, I unzip and start peeing. She edges forward to look at my equipment, which she hadn't ever seen before, and after staring at it, she points and says, "Daddy, is that your pee-pee?" Apostrophe. I realize there's about 10 other guys in the quiet bathroom. Holler is certainly listening, and I feel all self-conscious. I try and stay all calm and nonchalant and stuff and say, yes honey, nee, that's my pee-pee. Pee. She tightens her neck and retreats a couple of inches and says, "Well, it sure is ugly." Apostrophe. The whole room erupted in laughter. Every guy in the place was laughing his ass off, including me. Apparently, when I was little, I too had a trip to the men's room with my dad, wherein, when someone else occupied the stall next to us, I whispered loudly, "Daddy, is that man pooping? Don't let him poop. I don't want him to poop. Tell him to go away." Apostrophe. And laughter ensued. I drove a commercial submarine when I was 13. There were almost 100 tourists on board. At that time I had never even driven a car. One of my proudest achievements. Never relevant in conversation. A couple of months ago, my boyfriend and I were buying groceries. He stopped to look at a glass bottle of something, and it ended up slipping from his hands. And he thought to stick out his leg so it could cushion a fall or something like that. I took a step back at this exact moment, not realizing he dropped anything. We fucking caught the bottle between our legs and just stood there, mouths agape at one another. I don't even think we could recreate that situation if we needed to. So, after that you guys already set up the wedding date. I work at a school underprivileged children. A student's mom was in a custody battle with CPS and grandma and her. I had been aware the student's mother was having her trial with the child services. One day she comes to visit class, which is allowed. She asks to hold her 5-year-old son. She scoops him up and rushes to the door. Turns out she lost her battle with the courts and tried to steal her son she just lost custody of. I abandon my class and rush after her. After hitting me and scratching, I manage to remove her son. Run inside. Lock doors until cops arrive. Save the kid. The real reason my immediate family skipped my wedding reception. The night before my wedding, I, 25, was driving to the house my family had rented to hang out with just my brother, the best man, 20, my father, 54, and my uncle, my father's brother, 52. All of us are very close and have never had any problems before. Also of note, my brother has extensive MMA experience and is underage. I expected it to be relaxed, just drinking, telling stories and general bullshitting. When I arrived, 1 hour late, they were already completely trashed. My uncle was the farthest gone. He kept walking into the neighbor's yard, trying to fight the guy lot live th. Yeah, he would wander over there, shout obscenities. Yes, and I would escort him back. While my brother and dad encouraged him. At one point, my eye was distracted a little too long. And he disappeared. Red. I went over to the house. To see if he was there. And my dad and brother followed me. The owner came out again. Obviously pissed. Said, and I talked him down. WN. But my dad overheard the owner say that my uncle was an out of control jackass. Dad took a swing at the guy, and missed. Said, because my brother decked him, my brother did this. Because he was terrified the cops would come and arrest him for being underage. Again, heavily inebriated. They ended up in an all-out brawl. In the middle of the street, my brother choked my dad out completely in a matter of seconds. And then started walking around like he just won a world championship. During this, I'm just begging the owner to let me handle this and not call the police. Still haven't found my uncle. As soon as I saw what happened to my dad, I ran over to him, only to be pushed away. He got up and headed back to the house fuming. I returned to the owner and again. Thanked him for his discretion and gave him my number to call if anything else happened. I went back to the house to get my car keys to start searching for my uncle, but now my dad is gone. I asked my brother where he went and he replied bastard took the last of the jack and left. Don't care. Great. So now both my father and uncle were gone. So I got in my car and headed to the police station to see if either of them had been picked up. Got almost all of the way there when I got a call from my dad. But when I answered it, an MP responded. He asked if I was anon, and I said yes. He told me that he caught my father climbing the wall of a military base, a part with lots of tourism. Nothing important. Plus there was a graduation that week, so the guards knew shenanigans were going to happen, and that I needed to pick him up. When I got there were 6 Navy MPs around him, and he had handcuffs on. They took off the cuffs and he thanked each and every one of them for their service to our fine country. No shit. And they let us go. Really awesome of them. I know. He didn't talk to me the whole way home. Finally, 2 hours later, the neighbor called, telling me that my uncle was back, passed out in his yard. He said that my uncle had unlatched their gate, attempted to flip them off, and then passed out. No idea where he had been before this, and my uncle obviously didn't remember. Everything wrapped up around 5 AM. I got married the next day at 2 PM. I got 2 hours of sleep, but no hangover since I didn't drink. My family was so embarrassed / mad with each other. I thought my aunt and mom were going to kill them, that they stayed for the ceremony only. My wife and I told everyone that they got food poisoning from some restaurant, and it messed with the schedule of events. No best man, mother groom dance, plus 2 entire unfilled tables. Got sworn to secrecy. So now I'm telling strangers on the internet. TL. Doctor, my brother, dad, and uncle got hammered, fought each other and miraculously didn't get arrested, and only sort of ruined the wedding. You've got a really nice lady if she heard all that and still agreed to marry into the family. Sometimes it's more like one person marrying out of their family than marrying into yours. My pregnant and overdue wife was having strong contractions, so we dropped off our 3-year-old daughter at our babysitter's house on our way to the hospital. We met our midwife there, and after an exam, we were told my wife wasn't quite ready to deliver. So our midwife told my wife to head home, have a warm bath, and call her in the morning. Didn't look like it was going to happen that night. We thought, damn it, false alarm. So we decided to pick up our daughter from the babysitters on our way home. I put our daughter to bed and my wife poured a bath. My wife wanted privacy, so I sat in the living room down the hall. Her groans were getting progressively stronger. I had bookmarked a website I found a week or so before about how to home deliver a baby, just in case. My wife was a week late, so I quickly grabbed the laptop for a refresher. My wife finished her bath, so I handed her a towel and just like that, her water broke all over the bathroom floor. She kept groaning and then said she felt like she had to push. I was on my hands and knees with the towel cleaning when I looked up and saw the wrinkly head of my daughter. My wife asks, "Am I crowning?" ? And I nervously say, "Oh no, not at all. Maybe you should go lay down. Be there in a minute." So I quickly called our midwife and told her she better come over. I grabbed a bunch of towels from the closet and ran to our bedroom. She was already pushing, so I laid the towels out around the delivery area, held her hand, and told her we could do this. Amazingly, after about 5 pushes, my daughter's head started coming out. After adjusting her shoulder to stop her from tearing out of there, she slid into my arms. With the umbilical cord still attached, I put her on her mom's chest and covered her with the remaining clean towels. A few minutes later our midwife arrived, and I got to cut the umbilical cord right there in our bedroom. We filled out a bunch of paperwork, weighed my daughter, and she gave us some pointers. And then she left for the night. It all worked out. My daughter is 5 years old, and she is a perfectly healthy, beautiful little girl. Happy Mother's Day to my amazing wife, and to all the moms out there. How the fudge is this a story you never get to tell? You know goddamn well you yell it constantly. My friend W Harlot, I'll call Stan, and I were driving around in what happened to be the same night as P. Prom. He gets pulled over for speeding like Ike, the third time that month, so he's pretty fucked if he gets a ticket. Ket. The cop gets to the car and asks for license, NSE, registration, IN, and proof of insurance. And said, all Stan has is his license, NSE, and the glove box is foo. You lines of firecrackers, so if he even opens it to look, we are fucked. Kid. So he's making up some bullshit to the cop about why he doesn't have his registration when suddenly the cop holes asks him, are you headed to prom? Prom? Stan tells him that yes, of course we are. The cop asks, oh yeah, well then where's your date? At that point Stan reaches over, pats my thigh, and says lovingly, this man right here's my date. The officer gets this dreamy look in his eyes and says, no, I'm gonna let you boys go. Let's go. You have a great night at prom. I never got to go to mine. I'm northeast, and walks back to his cruiser and drives away. TL. Doctor, and that's the way my buddy got out of ticket, by implying I was his gay lover. Over. Edit. To answer some questions. He was in a suit from some event he had earlier that day. I was in like silk Hawaiian shirt that looked like a dress shirt in the dark. I never got to go to mine. I imagine the cop being gay had something to do with him missing prom. I hope I'm not too late for people to see this. My late grandfather told me this story about his honeymoon with my grandmother in the 1940s. My grandparents lived their entire lives in Brooklyn, New York, from birth until retirement, as the children of Italian immigrants. They were not particularly wealthy, so they spent their honeymoon on the neighboring island of Manhattan. One night, while on a leisurely stroll about the city, some jackass runs smack into them, knocking my grandmother into the street. After helping his wife to her feet, my grandfather rounded on the interloper, grabbed him by the collar, and lifted him off the ground. As my grandfather brought his fist back break the man's nose, he recognized the gentleman he was holding. It was Frank Sinatra, the Frank Sinatra, all blue eyes, the chairman of the board. It was then that my grandfather looked over his shoulder and saw a mob of screaming young women running their way. Now fully comprehending the situation, my grandfather said, look where you're going next time. Well yeah, the man nodded as my grandfather let go of him, and with a slight shove shouted, run, Frank, run. And with that, the leader of the rat pack ran off into night as the gaggle of rabid fans followed him. TL, Doctor, Grandma, and Grandpa run into a celebrity. Finally a chance to post this. At my local video rental shop, there is a gumball machine with maybe 5 or 6 different colored gumball types. Sticky taped to the delicious glass gumball globe is a sign that reads, guess the color that comes out of the gumball machine and win a free weekly rental voucher, 20C. With those odds, they were just asking to be exploited. So, 12-year-old me devised a devious plan. I went to some of the shops across the road and traded $15 for a colossal fuckton of 20C coins. Just did the math. About 75 20-cent pieces. When the employee lady saw me scuffling into the store with my shirt stomach filled with silver coins, man was she pissed. This may have been because she now had to spot my 75 guesses. I have no idea why she didn't just kick me out then and there. In short, the next 20 minutes consisted of the shop lady watching me individually slot each coin into the machine. She had a pile of vouchers in hand, dishing one out onto the rapidly growing pile every few guesses. I wasn't a ass about it. I paused my gumball endeavor if another customer was there, but she breathed a sigh of relief when I put the 75th gumball in my backpack. In total, I pocketed 18 vouchers, $126 total value, for $15. Took my fat stack of vouchers, shoved them in my pocket, and with my candy-filled backpack, I ran home. I'll never forget the sound of 75 gumballs shaking around on my back. It was the sound of an afternoon of accomplishment. Doctor, when I was 12, I single-handedly took down video rental stores. Well, this just exploded, and I have more information to tell you. I found that Red came out a little more often. So guessing Red every time after that stepped up the win rates. Edit 2. Obligatory thanks for the gold. It's awesome. And so the said it isn't useless. So many people have asked where 20c coins exist, and I can confirm, by looking at the kangaroos out my window, that I live in Australia. My 7th grade team, the group of teachers we all had, put together an elaborate detention/suspension policy. 2 missed homeworks meant losing your lunch period, a lunch detention. 3 was an automatic detention and a demerit. 5 demerits meant an in-school suspension. 10 meant an out-of-school one. My math teacher, whom I generally liked, but later realized wasn't a very good math teacher, had a bug up her butt about tuna. Yes, tuna. This was when tuna companies were grabbing dolphins in their nets, and it was a big deal in the press. And she was on the warpath. She gave you a warning for bringing tuna sandwiches into school, even though the cafeteria sold it, and 2 warnings equaled a detention. That never happened, because she probably couldn't give a detention for that. But it scared us, and got you on her Sugara list. One day, this kid Josh has a lunch detention with this teacher, and brought a tuna sandwich that day. She gives him a warning. Or so the story goes. None of us were there. Later that day, he's in class and his homework isn't done. So that should be an automatic detention. But he's working to finish it while she's going around talking to the rest of us. She notices, of course, and says something to the effect of your homework better be done before I get to you, or you're going to be suspended. It seemed like she was giving him a 5-minute grace period to finish up. But that's not he saw it. He goes to correct her. You mean detention, not suspension. Figuring she misspoke. After all, a suspension is a much bigger deal. And the rules don't call for that at all. She says no. Suspension. And brings up the tuna sandwich. He flips out, saying that she can't do that. And she says, as long as you're in my classroom, you obey my rules or something to that effect. So he yells, then I'm leaving your classroom, and jumps out the window. He was suspended for 3 days. I was on my way to class in New York City and this homeless guy approached me. He had a trench coat on, and he started to reach for something in his coat. I honestly thought he was going to flash me, so I was freaking out, but then of course, the unexpected. He pulled out a pigeon, and tried handing it to me while yelling, "Merry Christmas." Note, it was only October during this time. I was in middle school in the early 1990s, around when Sam's Clubs and the like started opening up. None of us could drive yet, obviously. We were like 14, and few of our parents had club memberships. So it was rare that anyone could go there and buy stuff. And none of us had jobs or anything anyway. So you're looking at about $5 in allowance here and there as your budget. One kid had a great idea and bought some of those huge bags of blow pops for $5. Let's say he walked away with 100 blow pops, 5c a piece. He came to school and sold them for a quarter and was out of stock within a few days. He did this for probably 3 weeks before others got in on the game. There were a bunch of arguments over whether the others had to go into a different line of candy or if blow pops were fair game. The first wave decided that everyone needed their own kind of candy, creating a little cartel. Kind of funny in retrospect. Close bracket. About a month or so later, a new kid starts selling, and he has everything. Must have spent $50, maybe $100, but he quickly ran into a problem. The school started cracking down on student-run candy sales in the cafeteria. So lunchtime, where the money was, became a really dangerous time to sell. Most of the kids who were selling just stopped cashing out while they could. But this one kid had way too much candy to do that. There were only 4 classes after lunch and you really weren't selling candy during the first 2 periods. Odds, so that left 5 or 6 reasonably good times to find customers. The bad news was that typically, you had the same kids, give or take, in all of your classes by now. Now, because we were broken up into levels, L's, the exception, things like gym and band, and were really bad times to sell candy, NDY. The good news was that homeroom was between 2nd and 3rd period, and that was homogeneous. Yes. So you got to see kids you'd otherwise not see, and more importantly, TLY, they'd see kids you'd otherwise not see. The kid with all the candy ended up repackaging it into Ziplocs of 5 pieces and sold them to kids for $1 each. Ouch. That happened for a few days until one of the kids in his homeroom asked to buy 5. Explaining that he was reselling the candy for 25c a piece and effectively getting a free piece of candy each day. And there were a few kids in his next period class W Howlett wanted to do the S. American English. He offered $4 because he wanted to make a profit off his friends. NDS. The kid with all the candy agreed. And not only sold out by the end of the week. But ended up buying another $50 or so worth of candy to do it the next week. Too. A few other kids in the homeroom caught wind of this and wanted in. Candy Kid ended up selling 5 bags at a time to about 5 or 10 kids in his homeroom, each seeing the opportunity to make a free $1 a day just by being middlemen. It was an easy sale. You tell your friends how you bought the candy and sold it quickly and flash them the wad of singles you had. It worked for 2 days. Maybe 3. Basically, LLY, the entire grade got flooded with candy sellers. And the candy being sold wasn't scarce anymore because the supply wasn't controlled by one person or a cartel. Telephone number. It was a commodity now. Prices crashed to like 10c per piece and a MLM style distribution structure couldn't support that price. The whole supply dried up pretty quickly thereafter, and with teachers starting to crack down, no one re-entered the market for months. Edit. Thanks for the double gold. Our 70-year-old teacher told everyone that he was sick and multiple faculty vouched for how sick he looked. Our drama class, he taught drama, was worried since he looks on the verge of death. Especially for a 70-year-old, since it was one of the last days of school and we often went to Starbucks during class as kind of a tradition. We went to Starbucks on the second day he was gone. We walked in, and lo and behold, our drama teacher is completely fine and in Starbucks. He sees us, has an oh shit look, and says we'll talk about this next week. He missed the rest of the week, which was this week, and we'll find out the story Monday. It's gonna be an interesting drama class on Monday now, and that, kids, is what we call acting. He failed to stay in character though. W Holot gave this guy a job. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.